Andrei Aramnau is one of the greatest weightlifters ever to grace the weightlifting platform. At 18 years old, he is the 2007 Junior World Champion and 2007 Senior World Champion. He's the 2008 Olympic champion at only 19 years old. Here he set 3 senior world records by snatching 200 kilos and clean and jerking 236 kilos as a 105 kilo athlete. The 200 kilo snatch alone adds a special significance to an already incredible performance, as this granted him entry into the very small and exclusive club of lifters who have snatched 200 kilos or more as non-supers in international competition. Now, this following statement may sound obvious given the previous accomplishments, but Andrei is, in my opinion, one of the greatest talents to ever touch a barbell for weightlifting. Allow me to present my case with the following lifts in training: 210 kilo snatch from blocks, 205 kilo snatch for a double from blocks, 200 kilo snatch for a triple from blocks, 205 kilo snatch from the floor, 240 kilos by 3 snatch grip power jerk from behind the neck, 280 kilo snatch grip power jerk from behind the neck, 260 kilo snatch grip push press plus overhead squat, 260 kilo jerk from rack, 260 kilo power jerk from rack, 205 kilo push press, and a 310 by 3 bar squat, which he estimated he could have done 350 if he maxed out. Now, Andrei in recent years has had less than an ideal time as a professional athlete. After the 2008 Olympics, Andrei was suspended by his own federation for drink driving, which seemed to be the start of a rough time with his federation. Today, however, we're here to focus on his snatch. As with all these What's the Deal videos, I like to reach out to the lifter and get their insight. This video is no different, with Andrei graciously answering some of my questions about his snatch. Welcome back to Siki-san, and welcome back to this episode of What's the Deal. So What's the Deal is a series, if you don't know, I've been doing on some elite level lifters, where I've reached out to them, gotten in contact with them, asked them some questions about their technique, and then done a analysis on what they are doing, and try and explain it as best as possible, explain the technique, and then for some of the better aspects, the more useful bits, what you can take away from that technique and then learn for yourself. So Andrei is ultimately and without a doubt one of my favorite lifters of all time. He was easily my favorite lifter from the get-go. His video, there's a video of him on like euroradio.fm YouTube where he snatched 180 kilos for a double, and I think it's one of my possibly top 5 weightlifting videos of all time. It is amazing. The visuals, the sound, the movement, the weight, his hair, the training hall, everything is superb. Now obviously from the intro you would have seen that Andrei Aramnau, did I say Aramnau? Have I been saying Aramnau? It's Aramnau. It translates to English as Aramnau, that's how it looks, but it's Aramnau. I'm not going back and changing that. But Andrei's technique in the snatch and clean jerk is sublime. Today we're focusing on his snatch. Now, the funny thing is about his snatch technique is a lot of it won't be very useful for you, but I will want you to go and try it in training and let me know what you think. It is useful for your learning, but it is not a style of technique that you will keep. Now, there is one aspect of his technique that I do think is very, very useful to, and it's a very common mistake a lot of intermediate and beginner lifters make, and it's something you can learn from him. And so that's what we'll start with today. The most useful thing for you from Andrei's technique is Andrei's start position, and with some minor changes, but it's worth you trying out both of these in your own training to see what feels the best and what works the best between you and hopefully if you have a coach, with your coach. So Andrei Aramnau's start position is what you would technically see or you would kind of call a textbook start position. So this is a start position that you teach every single lifter. This is how you would put them into positions when it is someone touching a barbell for the first time, whether that be at a CrossFit box all the way to a professional weightlifting school in the 80s Soviet era. So what is the start position? What does this look like? So there's a couple of key different points that we will look at. So if we start first with our foot stance, or how wide we're standing, our foot stance is slightly wider than hip width stance, so we're getting closer to that shoulder width stance. For example, in the clean we have a closer one, but in the snatch we want to get our hips a little bit lower and a little bit closer over our center of balance. Andrei's barbell starts over the base of his big toe, or his metatarsal phalangeal joint. Phalangeal always reminds me of Phoebe from Friends for some reason. It starts over there. His shoulder position is almost directly on top of the barbell, and depending on what kind of view you look at him, slightly in front of the barbell. Now, the next bit is very, very important, and it is where a lot of beginner lifters mess up. His femur or his quad and hamstring position, or his hip position or leg position, whatever you want to call it in the start position, is above parallel for the most part. So his hamstrings are either at parallel, or if you go by his quad line or hip line is above parallel. Why is this useful? Why is this in conjunction with shoulders on top of the barbell a useful start position? Well, this is the kind of standard textbook position that we give beginner lifters, and what a lot of great coaches and systems will teach is because it gives us maximum use in the snatch between our lower and upper body. It gives us this synergistic performance of our back and our legs, if you want to simplify it that much, and that's how I like to think of it. What allows you to use your back adequately, and what allows you to use your legs adequately all throughout the lift. Now, we've touched on the Hungarian start from people like Sorab Maradi or Ruslan Nurdinov, for example, have that start, and a lot of beginners start in that position. But we've talked about why that is not a good position, because it puts you in a very, very bad position. It unevenly loads the back for too long of the lift, and it also really messes up the timing for a lot of beginner lifters. Andrei is in a great position is because he carried us right through all the way up until his best lifts and his world record performances. So it's very, very interesting that he kept this, and this is a position I would endeavour for you to fix. So this is, for example, if you've seen what did Gabriel do to fix my clean, one of the things you didn't see was in fixing my snatch, he got me to raise my hips up because my hips were too low. And these small centimetres of difference in weightlifting, as you well know, make a huge difference. So I'd encourage you to get this start position in pretty much every single case I can think of. And, you know, we've coached a lot of lifters at this stage, and a large majority of them are amateur and intermediate lifters. This is the best start position. It works for me, and it works for Dara, and it works for everyone else. So myself and Dara obviously have very different body types, but it also works for the literally hundreds into the thousands of lifters we've helped with their snatch. And the reason for that is you need extreme, or you need some very unique circumstances in terms of your power development, your force production, and your anatomy to make other start positions work. Sometimes this psychological and physiological interface will feel a little bit better for people like Sorab Maradi, but for the vast majority of cases, I would endeavour for you to go for that textbook style technique. You know, you're not a squat jerker, you don't need to bend your arms in the clean, you don't need to start with a Hungarian start. You don't want to be unique because you want to be the most sublime, you want to be the most average shaped lifter, because your path to success is so well laid out that you can follow what works for other great people, and then this will work better for you for your performance. It's something I always want to reinforce to people. You don't want to be different. You want to have normal problems. You want to have common problems that are easily fixed and well understood. You don't want unique and strange issues, or you don't want to be different. That's not what you want. And I can assure you it will make your career so much better and so much faster in terms of progress, and a lot more linear if you conform to these typical textbook positions. Now, on to the second aspect of Andrei's technique that I actually don't like people using, but I do want you to actually go try it in your training later, just so you can understand what it feels like. So one of the useful parts of learning skills, or any skill, it doesn't even have to be related to weightlifting, is that we try different things, and we try them within reason. We try things that make sense within reason. We don't try things that are completely ridiculous. Most of the time we try things that may work, even if there's a very small chance of working. It's worth you as a lifter to kind of understand how they feel, and it really helps you calibrate other better quality movements in your lifting in this particular case. So what is taught and what is best for the vast majority of lifters around the world is that when we pull off the floor, the barbell sweeps back towards us in this S-pat, and it's facilitated by our knees almost exclusively moving backwards off the floor, and our shoulders moving slightly in front of the barbell. While this is happening, our legs are extending, our shoulders and our hips and our upper body is rising along with the extension of our legs, and as our shoulders move slightly in front, our shin shifts to the vertical, our knees move backwards off the floor, the barbell moves backwards off the floor, and then the lifter proceeds to follow the normal technical model as best as possible. Now, what's interesting about Andrei's technique is that Andrei very purposefully and very intentionally pushes his knees out as much as possible as he pushes off the floor. Now he does this immediately. So as he's pulling, even before the barbell gets to his knees, he's driving his knees out as much as possible. Why is this not great for pretty much everyone? Is because the back and quad strength and required for this, and the adduction strength in your hips required, and external rotation, range of motion is extreme. But it also most likely puts you in front, or puts the barbell too far in front of you. So we've talked about the barbell's common center of mass converging, but our common center of gravity to make one of one unit and balance this system appropriately. As the barbell is probably heavier than you, it's most likely to pull you forward. And when we use this style of technique where we push our knees out a lot, this drags us forward. And Andrei says this himself, and you can see in the videos, this drags him forward onto his toes. And you actually see him come up onto his heel as the barbell is at around mid-shin level as he passes his knees. And he'll say this, and I'll read it from him in a second. So this works for Andrei because he's done things like 210 kilo snatch from blocks and a 260 kilo snatch grip push press to overhead squat. For everyone else, and that goes for even a lot of elite level lifters, what this generally does is drags us too far forward. It keeps the barbell center of mass too far in front of us, and it ends up usually not putting the barbell far back enough over our center of gravity to put us in a well balanced position to express the most amount of power we need for snatches, and especially heavier snatches. So let's see what Andrei said about this technique. So first of all, I asked Andrei, how did you learn to snatch, or how did his coach teach him? So he actually starts by saying, my coach taught me wrong. He said I learned to tear, which is a translation or literal translation of snatch, to I copied the technique of athletes who have a good result in this exercise. Very interesting about this, Gabriel, another phenomenal lifter, also says he learned some of his best technique by watching other great lifters in the gym in his formative years as an athlete. I asked him what were the common mistakes you made during snatching, or what was the very, very common issues you had when you were learning to lift. He said, I made every mistake possible. I pulled hard with my hands, so assume this means bending his arms or using upper or arms too much. Obviously, I'll post the Russian answers he gave me, so if anyone speaks Russian, in the comments if you want to leave a better translation that's not from Google Translate, that would be great for everyone. So I pulled hard with my hands, I didn't have an explosion, and I didn't manage to catch the bar at the very bottom. So this all makes perfect sense from translation for once, which is phenomenal. So pulled with his arms too much. He didn't have a very good explosion, and a lot of lifters talk about this, the importance of the explosion. A lot of weightlifting technical models talk about this, of course, and that is maximum acceleration and force production as fast as possible over the shortest period of time in the right positions, the explosion phase. And I think the word explosion really captures the essence of what you need to be doing when you're extending and making contact and pulling under. Then he talks about I did manage to catch the bar at the very bottom. So this is in reference to being inefficient. So the most efficient lifters are the lifters who catch the barbell with the lowest bar height possible. You know, some people like to talk about this as something that is kind of easy thing to say and it's easy to get out there, but it is the hallmark of an elite level athlete. The best lifters in the world have the least amount of bar height and they catch it the lowest. The barbell gets as little height as it needs and you catch it as low as you possibly can. By doing this, we end up snatching and cleaning in particular, and snatching in particular, the most amount of weight possible that is possible for us. This allows for efficiency. We don't want a lot of inefficiencies. Then I asked what kind of variations Andrei uses in his snatch, and he says, when I have weak legs, I try to work with my back more, and when I have a weak back, I try to work with my legs more. So this is interesting. He's talking about how he feels at different points in training. He's not a static athlete, and none of us are. Things change. Some lifts get better. Some lifts get worse, depending on what stage in training we're and what you've been focusing on. Then I asked him what does he think about during his snatch. So what's kind of going through his mind as he is lifting. Always something I'm super interested. I'd love to write a book and talk to all the best lifters in the world and ask them, what are you thinking about when you're snatching? What are you thinking about when you're clean and jerking? Like literally, what are the phrases and thoughts running through your head? Doesn't matter if they're wrong. Doesn't matter if they don't make sense technically. Doesn't matter if they don't make sense to anyone else. These are the things I would love to know. So the most important thing I think about is the correct trajectory of movement to undermine and endure the height. The main task is climbing and a powerful explosion. So essentially he thinks about good technique. So then I asked him, what helped you most when you snatched your best weight? He said, I raised my best result. God helped me cope with a technically difficult exercise. Does he think big squats? Do I think big squats are very important for snatching in particular? I was like, do you think it's an important aspect or is it something you need to push? He said, without big squats, you can't develop leg strength as much as possible, and you definitely need to jump higher on the plates 10 times 4 rounds for an explosion of power and leg speed. I think he's saying you need to add weight. But for this particular result, if anyone does read Russian, I would like to know what exactly that means in terms of makes sense. Finally, I was saying, what do you think about when you're snatching? And I was like, I specifically asked, do you think about pushing your knees out when you're snatching? So this is something I was very interested in. And is it a conscious? For example, if you ask Gabriel will say he doesn't think about pushing his knees out. For Gabriel, it is something he reinforced a long time ago, or it's something that he never had to think about. It naturally happened to him. So I want to know if for Andrei it was similar. So he said, I try to spread my knees as much as possible, thereby going out a little on my toes and the outside of the foot. Then I come back and make an explosion. When you spread your knees, the strength of all the muscles of the buttocks is turned on as much as possible. So quite interesting. He does think about doing this. Again, I don't think it'll be very useful for you guys, but I do think it's something you should try and feel. One thing that would be useful, there's 2 different ways I want you to try this. So when you're pulling, I want you to try like Andrei and see what it feels like. So you're pushing your knees out as soon as the barbell starts pulling off the floor. And then I want you to focus on keeping them out as much as possible, even when you're making contact and extension. Then the second thing I want you to try, the second variation of this, is pull normally off the floor. And then after the barbell has passed your knees, I want you to bring your hips forward as you're making contact. And then I want you to think about pushing your knees out as much as possible when you're bringing your hips in. I think this might be a better variation for some people. Both of those probably won't work as well for a lot of people. But again, as I say, it's very, very useful for you to try these things and learn from them. So I think that's all we've got on Andrei's technique. Phenomenal lifter, incredibly gracious of him for reaching out, incredibly grateful for him for helping me out with this and answering my questions. He said he's always willing to answer questions about weightlifting. He seems to be in Brazil at the moment doing a whole host of seminars. It'd be interesting if anyone watching this has attended one. I don't think he speaks much Portuguese, so it'll be interesting how that goes for him. He said he wants to lift for a better country, so he might be done with Belarus. So time will tell how that goes. He seems to still be in incredible shape. He's doing like back squats straight into a snatch balance with like 190 and easily squatting 300. So he might be, hopefully he's still at it. We'll see. Well, maybe Brazil might take him. Who knows? Thanks for watching. If there's any lifters you'd like me to try, I'll be more than happy to reach out to them. Lifters who haven't responded or who have reached out to them, I have no shame in telling you, reach out to Ilya. He's seen some of my messages before about different things. He didn't see this. I sent him in one about this. He didn't even see it. I reached out to Toma, or Laura Dina Toma. She saw it and didn't respond. I don't think she likes doing stuff like this, but it's worth a shot. I reached out to Ruslan Nuradinov. He was happy to do it, but then he ghosted me, which I'm not going to lie, that was it didn't hurt. It's okay. It's the name of the game. I'm very lucky for any of the people who have, and very, very lucky for people who have helped me understand just a random person on the internet messaging them. But again, if there's people you'd love to see, I will definitely make an effort, aside from the 3 previous lifters I messaged, because obviously we won't be able to do those. And I want to keep this series in particular focused on people with their input as much as possible. So if there's any English speaking lifters who'd like me to do, that's great, because I can do a little interview with them and talk to them about their lifting. But again, it's whoever you want. Just let me know in the comments and I'll peruse them.